Okay, all right, guys, so let's continue. Let me move things around a little bit. Okay. So we have do you see this file a.txt? This is a file that I created actually before, we started the class. And I want to get rid of it because I want to show you how to create a new file, kind of a blank, empty file. For me to get rid of it, I cannot say rmdir because that would be kind of remove directory. And this is not a directory, it's a file. So I can do that by doing, any of you know how to remove a file? So how else learning this using, how else would you learn it? How else would you learn command line? So there's only two options. We have a kind of a Linux terminal and a Windows terminal. Okay, command prompt is the Windows. It's just because it's more kind of common and it's more used in the industry. So the terminal, the Linux terminal is more powerful, really. It's the one that's used in Mac machines, and it's the one that's used in servers. So when you, for example, get a virtual, machine on the cloud, usually it's using Linux. So when you try to kind of access it using SSH, you're accessing a Linux kind of a Linux machine. Let me look at the chat here. Okay, cool. All right. So does that answer your question, Alan? Okay. All right. So that's why we're using the Linux terminal. So I asked this question, and the question was, how do we delete a file? And Benjamin said you can just remove the file name, and that's correct. So I can say just remove, and then a.txt like this, and this will actually remove or delete the file. So right now, if you do list ls, you can see that a.txt doesn't exist anymore. So let me show you how we can create a file. You can create a file by using multiple really instructions. There are multiple commands that do that, but the one that I use is called touch, and it's like this, touch, and you give it the file name. So maybe before that, however, let me create another folder. So let's see where we are, just to kind of practice. We're inside user. Let's create make directory ITCS. Let's create that again. Let's go inside. Let's create, there's nothing here, of course. So when you list, it shows you nothing. Let's create kind of section 50. Is it 52 or 53? I think this is 53. So, and let me go inside section 53. And here I want to create the file. So I want to do touch, and then I can give the file a name. So maybe, for example, numbers, and you want to give it the extension. So you'd say dot something. Now, because this is going to be a text file, I know it's going to be a text file, I have to give it the extension txt. I don't have to, but it's better so that, when you see it in a graphical user interface, you can double click on it and it'll open in a text editor because the extension is txt. So this will create a file, it'll be empty, and the extension will be txt. So if you list, you will see that we have this file that has nothing. Now, one way to know that it has nothing, you can look at the size of it. So if you do list with the option L, again, that's going to give you the long version, kind of a more detailed information about the files and the folders that you have. One of them is the size of the file. And because the size is 0, that means it's empty. It has nothing. This file has 0 kind of bytes. So let's try to kind of put something in the file. There are really many ways of doing this. I'm going to show you how kind of I would typically do it. There's a piece of software called Vim, and Vim is a text editor, but it's not a graphical text editor. It's actually a terminal-based text editor. And for you to be able to edit this file, you would say vim, this is the command. And after that, you would do space and you would have the file name, numbers. So you would say numbers like this. I can do tab. As you can see, I like tab. And if you hit enter, something else will open. And this is really the text editor that you can, use to write stuff in your file. So your file is numbers.txt. It has nothing, and you can just, write stuff in it. Is that good, guys? Do you have any questions about this before we talk about Vim? Vim is only on Mac and Linux. Correct, but you can install it. So someone sent me a message saying that Vim is only on Mac and Linux. I'm pretty sure you can install it on the command prompt, the Windows command prompt. So even though Vim might not actually kind of exist by default, you can install it. And sometimes it doesn't exist for Linux operating system, depends on which version of Linux. Sometimes we only have one called VI, not Vim, and you can install them. But using this web kind of terminal, it seems that they have it installed, so that's great. We can use it. Any other questions about Vim or anything that we did? Okay, so 2 questions. Is there a list somewhere with these commands? They don't seem very intuitive. Yes, they're not very intuitive, and I will post notes. So after class, I will post notes, and in the notes, there's everything that we covered in today's kind of class. So there will be notes posted. Okay, let me see Blake's question. Will we be using the terminal for quizzes? If so, can we use the website? No, you're not going to be using the terminal for quizzes. Quizzes will have questions and it'll ask you about commands in the terminal, but you're not going to be really using the terminal to answer questions in quizzes or exams. How do we get out of text editor? Okay, that's good. So Mackenzie or file edit. So let's do that. So Mackenzie seems maybe she's done that and she wanted to leave. Or how do we exit Vim? That's good. So let me show you how you can do that. But before we exit Vim, let's kind of write a few things. Let's try to write something since we're already in, and then I can show you how we can leave. The problem with writing something is you have to change the mode. Excuse me. So Vim has something called modes. It's like styles. And you have to be in the insert style for you to be able to write something. Now, for you to go into the insert style, you have to type I. So if I type I just clicked on I, or rather, typed I, and you notice that it changed the bottom line to insert. That means I'm in insert mode. So right now I can insert information. So I'm going to say, hey, everyone, this is really cool. Not really, because this is really kind of seems really old. I can do enter here. I can say, I think it's actually not too bad. It's not too bad after all. So let's say we want to finish. Let's say we're done writing stuff. We have to exit the insert mode. And for you to exit any mode, you want to go escape. So you want to click or again, type escape or press escape. So I pressed escape. So when you press escape right now, you can see I'm not in the insert mode. And let's say you want to exit Vim, but of course you want to save it and exit. So the way you do that, you do a colon. Colon is the shift with semicolon. Do you guys know the colon? It's kind of 2 dots. So you would want to do the colon by doing shift semicolon like this. Do you see this colon here? So you do the colon and then you do an X, a lowercase x. It has to be lowercase. And you hit enter. And that's going to actually exit Vim. But before it exits Vim, it's going to actually save the file. So that's kind of what we want to do. We want to save the stuff and then we want to exit Vim. Now let me look at the chat window. You can also easily find these basic Linux commands online. Of course, if you Google, of course, Benjamin's saying this stuff is not very kind of specific. If you Google, the terminal commands, you will see them. And that's correct. What we're discussing is not something too specific that you cannot find, by kind of Googling. But I'll still post stuff, of course. So now, if I do list with the option L, you will notice that the size, which used to be 0, is more than 0 because now we have stuff. So you notice here that the size is 7.8. So that's the size of the file because it contains stuff. Do you guys have, let me pause here for a few seconds and see if you have any questions. Is the size in bits? No, the size is not in bits. That's a good question, Ervin. The size is in bytes. So the size will be in bytes. We really don't work with bits in computer science. You know, bits is the smallest unit, but we don't work with bits because we cannot change bits. You know, in the way our memory is structured is we can change bytes. We can't change bits. So bytes, which is a chunk of 8 bits. Okay, another question by Sweat. Can you repeat how to start the insert mode? My network was shaking in that part. Okay, so let's do it again. So I'm going to try to edit the file again. So I'm going to do vim numbers. I'm going to use tab, right? That's cool. So I'm going to hit enter. Right now I'm inside the, vim. For me to go to insert mode, all I have to do is just press on I. So I'm going to press on the letter I. And right now I'm in insert mode. And I can continue. I can say now I'm writing more stuff. How cool. And of course, to exit the mode, I want to do escape like this. And then to exit vim and save the file, I would do colon and X lowercase, and I would hit enter. And right now, if I do list with the option L, you will see that it has more bytes. So right now we have 117 bytes. And of course, you don't have to memorize all of that now because I'll post notes. But yes, I want to make sure that you understand kind of what I'm doing. You'll get used to, over the next few weeks, you'll get used to kind of what are the things that you need to write, what are the things that I'll be posting notes for. And most of all the commands that we talked about will be posted. But I want you to kind of understand what I'm doing. I don't want you to be lost at any point. Okay, guys, let me pause here for a few seconds, see if you have any questions. If we get E32, no file name. Yeah, so this one, you made a mistake. It's almost as if you did maybe save as instead of save. Maybe instead of doing :X, you did maybe something else and that changed it to save as, and it asked you maybe to put a name and you didn't put a name. Vim is kind of, it has a lot of commands, a lot of instructions, and we don't have to learn kind of everything. And I don't know everything about Vim. I prefer always to use a GUI, but sometimes, you're forced to use the terminal. I can tell you when later, when sometimes, you're forced to use the terminal. But of course, if you can use the GUI, it's better to kind of edit stuff in the GUI. So I can't answer your question, Brett. Maybe the best thing to do would be to kind of try to quit Vim and kind of do the whole thing again. So Irvine is asking, and I want to repeat those questions because I don't think the chat window is going to be shared with you. So it'll only be the shared screen. So I'm going to just remind me to repeat those questions. Let's see. Can we open files directly through the terminal? You can, but of course, using the web browser, you can't, because right now we only have the web browser, and the web browser cannot, open applications. The web browser doesn't have access to our text editor. That would be a big vulnerability. But we can, and I'll show you how you can do that in maybe in your terminal, not the web browser terminal. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, Brett said that that's what he did, but he may have missed a point or a step. Yeah, so you're stuck right now, Brett. Do you know how to exit or no? Can you try to put a name? Try to kind of, if it's asking you for a file name, try to kind of give it a name and see if it'll. Okay, so it seems that it's working. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I want to go back to actually Irvine's question. And Irvine was asking, can you open the file from the terminal? You can do that if you're using your own terminal. So I'm going to share my own terminal just to kind of show you how we can do that. Let's see. I don't see my terminal. Maybe I closed my terminal. Let me open my terminal again. Okay, so I open my terminal. Let me kind of increase the font and let me share my terminal. Okay, do you guys see my terminal now? Give me a reaction. Okay, perfect. So I can do pwd, and you can see I'm inside my home directory, and that's my user inside users. That's a little bit different than what you saw because this is Mac. It's not really Linux. So there are kind of minor differences, but they're very minor. But essentially, this is my home directory. And let's say I want to create a folder here. So let me say mkdir itcs 3160. I can list. You can see I have a lot of things here. I didn't really want to kind of list, but that's okay. You can see what I have here. I do have itcs 3160, which is the one that I just created. I want to go inside. So I'm going to say cd it. I'm going to use the tab. Perfect. And if I list, you can see there's nothing. Let me clear my screen. Okay. So I'm going to list again. You can see there's nothing. Right now, I'm going to create a file. Let me say touch a.text. And if I list, you can see I have a.text. Let me vim that, vim a.text. Right now, I'm inside, just like what I showed you. I'm going to go inside insert mode. I'm going to say hello, hello. And I'm going to do escape, :X, and then I'm going to hit enter. And right now, of course, if I do list, I have a.text. If I do list with the option L, that's going to tell me, list with the option L. I made a mistake here. It'll tell me that the size is 12 bytes, and this is the file. And the question that Irvine asked is, can I open it from the terminal? And the answer is yes, if I'm using my own terminal. And you can do that by open. So if you do open dot, then a.text, and if you hit enter, it'll actually open. You don't see that, but I can share that with you. This is what opened, a text editor that has hello, hello. This is a GUI. This is a kind of a GUI text editor. Then you can do this. You can move it with the mouse. You can do this with the mouse. So this is kind of a GUI editor. Is that good, guys? You can do that, of course, in the web. In the web, it's not going to open because, again, the web doesn't have access to your editor, but your terminal does. Does that answer your question? Do you guys have other questions? Okay, it's good. It doesn't seem that you have questions. Let me go back to sharing my web. Okay, so I'm sharing my web now. If you open the file, you made it open zip. Oh, like if you try, let's try actually. We haven't tried. Let's try. I'm telling you stuff and maybe you don't believe me. Let's try. Let me try to open numbers. Yeah, it does open it, but of course it opens it in the browser. It doesn't open it kind of in your text editor because it can't. It opens it in a kind of a web text editor. So that's good. That's good. That's a good thing. So we can switch between the terminal and this. But this is GUI. Don't forget that. This is GUI. So if you can't have that in the terminal. If you have only access to the terminal, you have to vim or VI, because this will not work. The only reason why this is working is because we have kind of another editor here that's GUI. I can use the mouse, I can do this. You can see I'm using the mouse. This, you can't do that in a terminal. So let me get rid of it. I was actually able to edit the file, I think. So if I vim numbers, you can see I was able to edit it from there. But again, that wasn't terminal. That was kind of outside of terminal. Okay, guys, do you have any other questions? It's good to ask questions. And again, if I think that you're asking too many questions, I'll let you know. But I like to hear questions. Okay, I'm gonna quit this one. I'm gonna do escape, colon, X, enter, and that's how I kind of exit Vim. Okay, guys, so let's talk about another command. And that command shows the content of this file. Now, of course, you can see the content of the file by doing vim. I mean, if you vim numbers, it'll tell you the content. That's the content of the file. But let's say we want to see the content without kind of editing it. Let's say we don't want to edit it. We don't want to be in this kind of editor. Vim is usually for editing. So you wouldn't use vim unless you want to edit. Let's say you just want to display the content of the file. So I'm going to do escape, exit this one. Anybody knows how to display the content of the file? I think some of you know. Some of you should know a little bit of terminal. Okay, so Paul said cat, and cat is correct. So cat is going to actually display the content. That's one way of displaying the content. So I can do cat numbers. You see what I did here? I just did cat, then the file name. And when you hit enter, it actually shows you everything. Like, hey, everyone, this is really, or not really, I think it. That's the content of the file. So cat will do that. It's a very important command that it's used, frequently, cat. And you can do more things with cat. So cat has its own options, just like list has options, like the one we saw, which is L and A. Cat has options, touch has options. Those commands have options. So they have kind of arguments that you can provide. Okay, I'm going to hit enter like this. I'll give you one of the options if you want. There's an option N like this, and that's going to number the lines. So if you do this, then numbers.txt. So I'm going to do cat with the option N for numbers.txt. You can see it actually numbered the lines. 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't like this. So maybe what I can do, let me vim the file. I'm going to vim numbers.txt. And at the end here, I'm going to insert a new line so that there's a new line here at the end. Okay, let me escape, colon, X, enter, that's going to save. And right now, if I cat numbers, you can see that it'll be better like this. So there's actually another line here, another new line. So that's good. We like it like this. Of course, if you do cat with the option N, it'll give you the numbers. Okay, do you guys have any questions? Okay, I'm gonna vim the file again. And I'm going to add more stuff. So I'm going to go to insert mode, like line here. How are you today? I'm just trying to write stuff here. Like that, for example. I'm going to escape, colon, X, enter. And now if I cat with the option N, you can see that I have all those kind of lines. Which again, you kind of, that's what you would expect based on kind of what we saw earlier. Now there's a command called head, and there's another command called tail. And these commands are actually extremely useful when you have very large files. So let's say numbers is very, very big. Let's say it's 1 gigabytes of data. And you don't want to display everything because that'll take, first of all, that'll take time. Second of all, it's not going to be very useful for you to see everything. What you want to do is you want to see just a portion of the file, just maybe the first 10 or 5 lines, or maybe the last 10 or 5 lines. And you can do that using the two commands head and tail. And it looks like this. You would do head, and there is the option N again, similar to the one that we saw here. And you give it the number of lines. So say, for example, 10. So I want to see just the first 10 lines. And then you can say, numbers.txt like this. And if you do this, you can see that it shows us, the first 10 lines. Of course, you can do a tail and 5 if you want, 5 or 10, doesn't really matter. And that will show you the last 5 lines. You can see that these are the last 5 lines. Is that good, guys? Does that make sense? Okay, so that makes sense. These commands will also be in the notes. Now I'm going to, so Joseph is saying this is kind of cool. I'm glad. I'm going to show you something that's even more cool now. What you can do in the terminal, it's not something that you're going to be doing a lot of in this course, but it's actually, it's important for you to kind of know how to do it, or at least see an example of it being done, so that when you see it somewhere else, you're not entirely confused. What you can do is you can pipe commands, meaning that you can, it's almost like cascading. So you take this command, and after you do this, you can cascade this one to it. So it's almost like you're chaining those commands. And these are called piping. Let me show you an example. Let's say I'm going to do this cat in numbers. So that's going to give me this output, right, guys? This command, let me kind of be here very clear. This command is going to provide this output. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this command, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to hit enter. I'm going to pipe it with another command. So the other command is going to be maybe tail in 5 or in 10. And what's going to happen in that case is the output of this command is going to be the input to the second command. And by chaining or cascading those instructions, you can actually build something extremely powerful. You can do very powerful stuff. We're not going to see anything too powerful, today, because you need to know more instructions. But if you have a lot of instructions that you can kind of chain those instructions and build something that's actually pretty useful. So I'm gonna just do something simple, right? I'm gonna say cat with the option in numbers. And for you to chain this to another instruction, you would have to use the pipe. This is the vertical, I don't know what we would call it, maybe vertical, what is that called? I think it's called vertical something, vertical bar maybe. You do that by doing shift and backslash. This is backslash. If you do shift with backslash, it gives you this vertical bar or vertical line. And after that, you can do another command. So let's say I want to do tail, and I'm going to do N5. So before I hit enter, let me make sure that we understand the logic of this. This command is going to give us this, kind of all of that. That's the output, excuse me. The output of the first command, the output of this is going to be essentially that. And then that's going to be the input to this one, to this tail. So from that one, I'm going to get the last 5, something like looks like this. So this is what I should see. If if what I'm saying is true, this is what I should see from 21 to 25. So let's hit enter and see. Do you guys see what happened here? So I was able to chain those 2 commands. Now, who wants to think about something? And I think all of you want to think, but I'm not sure who wants to know the answer or who's going to know the answer. Let me ask you a question. How can I, by chaining commands, okay, guys, I want to chain maybe more than 2 commands. Maybe I want to chain 3 or 4 commands. How can I print exactly this, for example? Let's do this. So I want to print exactly this. I'm going to give you a minute to think about this one. Don't answer in the chat window. Just if you know the answer, raise your hand. And I will tell you, and I will ask you to answer either through the chat window or through kind of unmuting yourself. But the question that I have for you, do you guys understand the question? Let me repeat it one more time. And I want to make sure that you understand the question. I want to write a command that's going to be piped with another command and maybe with a third command that's going to print those lines exactly like they are. 5, line here, 6, 7, how, 8, 9, 10 are. Do you guys understand the question? Give me a reaction if you understand the question. Like, okay, that's good. I need more of you guys. We have almost 70 students. I need A lot of reactions. I don't want just 5. Okay, that's good. That's good. It seems that you guys understand the question. Think about the answer. You should know the answer, and based on what I explained, you should know kind of what the answer is if you think hard enough. There's nothing that you need to know that I haven't explained. Think about it. Raise your hand. I'm gonna give you time. I can see only one student so far, but I'll give you more time to see if other students also know the answer. All right, so I'm seeing, few of you. That's good. That's that's not bad. That's a few, but that's good. Blake thinks that he knows too, it seems. He says, I got it in the chat window. Let me try. I'm going to pick a random student. Let me try Ryan. Ryan, you can unmute yourself, or you can just write the answer in the chat window. Either is fine. What do you think we want to do? Like, can you give me the logic? Like, how do we do that?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I did cat, and then you do cat numbers, and then you do head and get the first 10, and then you do tail and do the last 6.
So that's perfect. That's exactly what we should do. Of course, you can tail then head, but head then tail, it's easier. So what Ryan said is, let's first cat with the option N, and let's pipe that with head and then 10, and let's pipe that with tail, then 6. So the first one is going to give us the numbers. The second one is going to give us all of that. And the third one is going to give us kind of all of that. And let's see, you can see that it worked. Are you guys, are you happy with this? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's how you do it. Was that your answer for the other students? I think that was probably it. Okay, that's good. And again, this is very simple, but you can do very kind of sophisticated things. You can take this text, you can calculate the frequencies of words using piping. You can have a command that's going to separate the words. You can have a command that kind of sorts them. Then you can have a command that groups them. Then you can have a command that can calculate the frequency. So you can have 5, 6, 7 commands that do something very useful that you wouldn't think that you can do with the terminal. So it's pretty cool, it's good to know. At least now when you see this pipe command, you're not entirely confused. You know what that does. So that's good. Let me look at my notes. And if you have any questions, let me know while I do that, while I look at my notes. Okay, so Irvine is asking, can you apply a program to a text file in Terminal? I don't know what that means, but if I don't understand the question, but you cannot open anything as a text file. So let's say you have a movie, or let's say you have an audio file. If you try to vim that file, it'll open, but it's not going to make sense because files have something called encoding. So when you have an audio file or a video file, they have a specific encoding. And the encoding that they have is different than the encoding that we use for text files. So text files also have a specific encoding. We use something called ASCII. But when you have other files that have different kind of extensions, that have different encoding, you wouldn't be able to open it in Vim. I mean, you can open it, but it's not going to make sense. You're not going to see anything that's making sense. So Mackenzie is asking Irvine, can you kind of like, do you think, did you mean that you want to put code into a text file? You can put code in a text file. Let's do that. So let's do that. Let's talk about kind of code for a little bit, we don't have too much time, but let's talk about code because at some point we have to, and maybe it'll answer kind of Irvine's question. So what you can do is you can write code, you can write C code or Python code or Java code, and you can run it from the terminal. This is something that you may have done, some of you. I don't think many of you have done that because now you would use IDE. There's no reason to use kind of the terminal, but you can do that. Let me do that, and then I'll continue with what I want to say. So I'm going to create a file. I'm going to say touch. I'm going to say kind of print hello.py. Now, a few things to keep in mind here. The extension is py, but that's not important. So the extension by itself actually has no importance at all. The only reason why we would put an extension is because when other people see it, they know that it's a Python file. Also, when you double click on it, your operating system is going to know that it's a Python file, so it's going to open it in an IDE. But besides that, it's really not important at all. I mean, the extension is useful, but it doesn't determine the encoding of a file. It's just part of the name. It makes things easier. You can, again, look at the extension, it's a Python, or at least it should be a Python. It doesn't have to be Python, but it should be because the extension is py. And of course, again, if you double click on it, the Python IDE should open. So I'm gonna do, so Irvine says that, her question may be, she wanna kind of withdraw her question, or Irvine, they wanna withdraw their question, and that's okay. But I still wanna kind of talk about code because again, we wanna do that at some point. So touch print hello is gonna create a file, right, with the extension py, and I can open it using Vim. That's perfectly fine. It has nothing, we know that, and I'm gonna write some Python code here. I'm gonna write something very simple. So even if you don't know Python, it'll make sense. I'm gonna say print hello world using Python. So this, guys, is gonna print this kind of string. So it's very simple. Again, you can guess easily that that's what's going to happen. There is no semicolon in Python, so we don't want that. It's just a command. It's actually very similar to sys.out.println. This is how you do it in Java. You all know Java. In C, you can do kind of print if that in C. So you know kind of what that does. I'm just going to keep it like this. I'm going to do escape :x, and right now I have a file that has the extension py that has Python code. Okay, guys, I can cat it if you want. Let me cat it. Here I displayed it, and that's what it is. And I can execute it. So I wanted to show you this because I want to show you a command called Python. And this command is going to execute Python files. So I can do Python space and print hello.py. And if you do this, the software Python is gonna execute the Python code that's inside this file. So if you hit enter, this is the output. Hello world using Python. Let me change the file a little bit. Let me vim print hello. And let me do another print 10 plus 5, just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna do escape, and I'm going to do X, so save and exit. And then I'm going to do Python print hello. And you can see that it printed, these two lines. Did that make sense, guys? Okay. Anthony, you have your hand raised, but I suspect that it's because of the question that I asked. Did you wanna, or do you have a question? Okay. Okay, so Marcus is saying, are we gonna kind of touch this again? By that, do you mean like the command touch, or kind of study it again? If you're asking review it, of course, we're gonna have to do that. So we're gonna have to kind of talk about Python more. But you can create Python files and run them in the terminal. So, okay. So Blake is asking, can we see, how we can get the professional version of PyCharm? Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that before class ends. Let's see how many commands I have left. Maybe we can do just a few commands and then we can switch gears to the IDE and then maybe something else if we have time. So we talked about, I'm looking at my list now. We talked about touch, we talked about Vim, we talked about head, we talked about tail, we talked about cat. There are some commands to renaming files. We don't need to talk about them now. There are some commands to kind of copying files. We don't have to talk about them now. There's one command that I want to talk about, and it's called echo. And after we talk about echo, we can kind of switch gears, and then we might revisit, we might revisit the terminal after, later. We're going to do that when we talk about Python. But I think next week, I'd like us to start with the databases. All of that was useful and necessary, but next week we can start with databases, and then we can revisit the terminal at some point. So that's good. Najaf was asking, what does touch do? And I think you answered him. It creates a file. Okay. So let me go to the link. Let's do echo first, and then we can do let's do the IDE. So echo is gonna echo, like repeat a string. So something like this. It sounds kind of silly, but I'll show you how you can use it in a useful way. So you can say, for example, hello everyone. And if you hit enter, it'll echo it. It'll kind of do it. It'll say it again. It'll kind of display it again. Which again doesn't seem very kind of interesting, but I'll show you how you can use it in a useful way. So let me show you, before I talk about the options of echo. Echo has a lot of options. Before I talk about the options of echo, I want to show you how you can take this one and echo it, not here, but inside a file. So let me cat print hello. So we have those two lines. This one's going to print a string. This one's going to print an expression that will be evaluated first. And let me do another expression. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say echo, and I'm going to do the Python expression. So for example, print maybe 10 multiplied by 2. So this is just a string, and I want to echo it. Now, of course, if I hit enter, it'll be echoed here. I don't want it to be echoed here. I'd like it to be added to the file. So I can do that by doing echo, and then I can do this opening or closing rather angle bracket. This is called angle bracket. That's what I call it. That's one name for it. Maybe another name would be greater than, but I feel a closing angle bracket is better. So essentially, I want to redirect the output to a file. So this is kind of essentially redirects the output. And I want to redirect the output to a file. It's called kind of print hello.py. Now notice what's going to happen now. Something actually undesirable or undesired will happen. I'm going to hit enter. It seems that it's working. When I cat print hello, you notice something kind of bad. It overwrote the entire file. So my file used to have those two lines. My intention was to append this to the file, but it didn't really append. It actually almost erased everything, and it kind of added this. So that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I knew that that was going to happen, but I wanted to kind of show you that this is a problem. Anybody knows how to append? Maybe some of you know how to append using echo. It's actually very simple. It's very similar to what we're doing here, except that there's a minor difference. It's actually, you see what Blake said, like double closing angle bracket, and that's correct. So let me append something else. By the way, guys, let me show you something that I did. I can use the arrow keys to go up, kind of previous, up and down. So up is going to go to the previous command, and up again is going to go to the previous command, and up again is going to go to the previous command. So I can use my arrow keys to kind of go back to something that I've done before. Where is the one that? Oof. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't kind of show everything, but here is the one that I want. And I want to do double kind of closing angle bracket, but I want to do something else. Let me do here print. Oh, so notice here we have a problem. We'll talk about this in a second, but let's say I want to print hello world again. Now, of course, the problem, you can see what the problem is. The problem is we have kind of a double quotation here, and we have double quotation here, and double quotation here, and double quotation here. So it wouldn't know, the terminal is not going to know which one is the opening and the closing double quotation. And one way to fix that would be to use single quotes here. We can do that. That's allowed because in Python, single quotes are the same thing as double quotes. I think it's the same in Java, not so much in C, but in Java, you can use single or double quotes. It'll be the same thing. In Python, it's the same thing. If you use single or double quotes, it's the same thing. So I'd like to append this to this file. So let me hit enter. It did not like this. So that's good. We're kind of seeing some errors here. Let me do something else. Let me use the escape character. So I'm going to echo print, but the escape, I don't know if the escape is going to work. We'll try it. So I'm going to escape this double quotation. Hello world again. Oh, but wait a second. Yeah, it's fine. Let me escape this one. Let me get rid of the exclamation point. Let's kind of make sure that we know where the problem is. And then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do print like this. So essentially what I did here, guys, I escaped this double quotation, and I escaped this double quotation. Okay, so maybe it worked. Let's try to... I'm not sure if it worked, actually, but let's try to cat print hello. Yeah, it worked. Yeah, so that worked. Was it the exclamation point? I don't think so. If we have exclamation point here, it'll still work. It's actually the exclamation point. I didn't like the exclamation point. So maybe we can escape. No, it's not the, let's see. Maybe we should escape the exclamation point. That's kind of interesting. Let's escape the exclamation point. Okay, kind of that worked. Let's try to print. Okay, well, that's a problem. Right now, the exclamation point has this, backslash. So as you can see, there are some problems that you could encounter. Even me, who I do a lot of terminal coding, I still encounter some things that I haven't encountered before. I typically don't write code like this. Of course, if I want to write code in Python, I would Vim. I wouldn't just keep appending. That doesn't not very convenient. I can just keep Vimming. Vimming is much better. And I can kind of edit it here. I went to insert mode. I can get rid of this. I can add more stuff here. Print, say 8 multiplied by 2 plus 5. Something like this. That's how I would, of course, edit code. And let me do colon and this X, and then I can do Python print hello.py. So that's how I typically do it. Okay, guys, I want to show you one last thing, and then we can go to PyCharm. Notice that I told you that the extension here is not very important, and that is absolutely true. Let me prove that to you. I'm going to create a file called print something, but but I don't want to use py. I can use .txt, I can use abc, I can use any extension I want. I can even do MOV, like a movie. Let's just do this, MOV. Of course, we shouldn't do that. That would be kind of confusing to people. But let's say you want to come up with your own extension, and that would be maybe ABC. You can do that. And you can write some Python code there. So let me then print something, ABC, and let me write some Python code, print, this is Python code. And let me escape :x enter. And of course, if I list, you can see I have print hello.py and I have print something.abc. Now, if I do Python, and then if I try print something, you notice one thing that you're not noticing here, but if you do the same, what I'm doing, you will notice something, is that you cannot tab. The reason why you cannot tab, or if you try to tab, it's not going to continue, is because the terminal is saying, wait a second, this is not a Python file. Why are you using it after the Python command? So the Python command is supposed to run Python files which have the extension py, but this one doesn't, so this one is not a Python file. So if you try to tab, it's not going to continue for you. I'm tabbing right now as I'm speaking. It's not continuing for me. Now, if you replace this with hello, and if I tab, you can see it continues for me. But when I try S and tab, it doesn't continue for me because it doesn't have the Python extension. That being said, I'm not going to care. I'm just going to continue writing it manually. And I'm going to do enter, and you will see that it will run just fine. So even though it has the extension ABC, you can still run it because Python is going to look at this file as a text file. It'll treat it as a text file, and it'll just execute what's in it. Did that, guys, make sense? I'm trying to be kind of as clear as possible and slow also, but that's okay. It's important that you all kind of understand what I'm saying. If you have any questions, you should let me know. Do you guys have any questions about anything we did? And of course, the file may not have an extension. So we can actually rename this one. Maybe I should show you this command, and it's called move. You can use move to rename. So I'm going to use move to move something.abc, print something.abc to print something. So essentially that's going to rename this one to this one using the command move. And if I hit enter and if I do list, you can see right now we have this file, which I haven't changed, and we have this file, which is print something. So this one doesn't have any extensions, and that's okay. You can still execute it using kind of Python like this. You can still execute what's in it. So files don't even have to have extensions.